they were a worthy 8th seed in these playoffs. Also out west, you've got the 2 seed Houston Rockets, currently up 2-0 on the Dallas Mavericks. Rajon Rondo has been announced that he is out indefinitely with an injury for the Mavericks, and that could actually be a good thing for the Mavericks. I want to say that Rondo's plus minus for the Mavericks is 9, but it's -9, where his team is actually 9 points better when he's not on the court than when he is. So that could be a good thing, a blessing in disguise for the Mavericks. Houston might still be too much for him anyway, but we'll see. Now, the 2 Western Conference games that there are tonight, we've got Portland versus Memphis. Memphis is currently up in that one, 1-0. They are the lower seed. That is a 4-5 matchup seed-wise, where Portland is the 4 seed because they won the division. However, Memphis did win more games in the season. And then at 9:30 tonight, we've got the second game between the 3 seed Los Angeles Clippers and the San Antonio Spurs. The Clippers won the first game. They are up 1-0 in the series. That is a great series to watch. If you're a basketball fan, try and catch as much of that series on TV as you can. Over in the East, tonight at 6 p.m., we had the Hawks taking on Brooklyn. I don't know if they won or not. I would think they did. Brooklyn's not very good. Atlanta's the 1 seed. Atlanta's up 1-0 in the series. Cleveland is up 2-0 over the Boston Celtics in their series. The Chicago Bulls are up 2-0 over the Milwaukee Bucks in their series. Derrick Rose is back for the Chicago Bulls, playing quite a bit of minutes and playing fairly well for the most part. So look for the Bulls to possibly be a contender in the East if they have a healthy team. And then by far the most intriguing and interesting, entertaining playoff matchup of the first round in the NBA playoffs is the 4 and 5 seed out in the East, where you've got the 5 seed Washington Wizards at a 2-0 lead over the 4 seed Toronto Raptors. And what makes it even juicier is just a week ago, Paul Pierce, who's now on the Wizards, came out and was talking about how nobody's scared of the Raptors. And then the Raptors GM at their pep rally thing they did right before the playoffs started dropped some profanity regarding the subject and fired up his crowd and got fined, I think it was $35,000 or something like that was all he got fined. But anyway, there's some heat in this matchup going on right now, and that's, if nothing else, if the lust and appeal of the teams and the stars involved wasn't enough for you, at least now there's some extracurricular hate going on between the sides that's making for an entertaining watch. One last bit of NBA news before we move on to other topics. Scott Brooks was fired as the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. You look at the guy's record, and it's remarkable. It's definitely something that you would think this guy should never be fired when you have a winning record, such as he did as a coach. However, when you also take into the consideration the talent that he's had on those teams and never successfully winning an NBA championship, I want to say they only made it to 1 finals ever. It is, as I said earlier, it's all relative. Everything is relative. And when the expectations supersede the success, then people get fired. And unfortunately, that's what happened to Scott Brooks. I'm sure he will not have a hard time at all finding a new gig somewhere, and I would definitely expect him to have success at that new gig as well. All right, throwing in a baseball quickie here, just a tiny bit of baseball. The Twins still stink, but at least they are changing some things up in an attempt to do something about it. And they are winning a few games here and there. They blew one last night. They were up 5-3 and ended up losing 6-5, but it was to the Royals, who are one of 3 teams in all of baseball to have 11 wins so far. In fact, well, double digit in general. Nobody's got 10 wins, at least not as of today, last night I should say, when I checked the standings. But the New York Mets have 11 wins over in the National League, are the only team with double-digit wins over there. And then the two in the American League are the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals, both in the AL Central, both with 11 wins and 3 losses as of this morning. And in just 2 little Twins notes before we move on to football, I'd just like to say that I very much like the changing in center field. Jordan Schaefer was quite obvious that he can't produce at all to any extent in any aspect of the game, at least not now. And Shane Robinson has come in and replaced him in center field, and while he's not, making an undeniable case for the All-Star game or anything like that, he has at least shown some consistent productivity both in the outfield and at the plate and around the base pads that we did not see at all from Jordan Schaefer at any point in time. So there's that. And then also one last thing on the Twins. If everyone could stop referring to the Ervin Santana suspension, the 80-game suspension, as though he were Johan Santana back in his prime. Okay, Ervin Santana was a 10 to 15 win guy for us for the entire season. Okay, that was the best we could have hoped for out of him, was between 10 and 15 wins. That's the same expectations as Hughes. That's the same expectations as Gibson. But yet I hear so many people on sports talk radio and amongst fans talking about Ervin Santana's 80-game suspension like, oh, that killed our pitching rotation in our season because we lost Ervin Santana for 80 games and he was going to be our super great pitcher. No, he wasn't. He was the second guy in your rotation with very little ace potential, and having him as the second guy in your rotation might be 1 to 2 spots higher than he should be on anyone's rotation. So please, it hurt the Twins. It definitely didn't help them at all. But please stop referring to it as though it was a former Santana pitcher in his prime that we lost and not this new guy who is Ervin Santana, not to be confused with former Twins great pitcher Johan Santana. Different guys. Keep them straight, Minnesota baseball fans. All right, well, let's move on to our final serving of meat of the night, and that is the NFL. I've got to bring you my part 3 of my NFL draft preview. I will, of course, be crunching it in time-wise, as I am going well over an hour, and I don't know how much time I got left before I'm going to need to upload the show. So we will be cramming some of this in. We'll get the rest of the NFL news out of the way, and then we will do our Part 3 draft preview, which involves the players in the upcoming draft. So, first bit of NFL news, especially for all you fellow Minnesota Vikings fans. Adrian Peterson has officially been reinstated. He is allowed to be a part of the team and practice and what have you. He did not attend voluntary workouts, which started this last week. They are optional. He was not expected to attend them. He doesn't ever go anyway, so that's no big deal. The real issue is that the Vikes now have the real opportunity to trade him, should there be a willing trade suitor. And it also gives us more necessary information that we need to know to plan our strategy about putting our team together in the upcoming NFL draft. So the timing of it is very beneficial as well. Whether he stays, whether he goes, we will at least know, or it will happen. If he is to depart, it'll happen between now and the draft. And if he hasn't been traded by the time the draft is over next weekend, then he will be a Minnesota Viking almost for sure, at least this next season. Also in NFL news, the Johnny Manziel rehab watch has finally ended. The TMZ people can finally hop out of the bush outside of Johnny Manziel's rehab facility. He is out and back with the Browns. That's not to say he is going to be their starting quarterback. They have a veteran, Josh McCown, that they brought in to be that guy if they need. However, having McCown and Manziel both there one would definitely think that they are not likely to look quarterback in the early rounds of the draft, assuming that Manziel continues to say and do the right things, which is what the Browns are saying is the most important in all of this, is that he show and do the right thing on a consistent basis. That's what they're looking for. But anyway, he's back, and good luck to him. I don't root for him to not succeed. I merely just don't expect him to succeed. That's all. And in another shining example of Chip Kelly's genius in Philadelphia, the Eagles on Sunday announced that they are signing quarterback Tim Tebow to their roster. So they traded Nick Foles away for Sam Bradford. They now have Sam Bradford penciled in as their starting quarterback. And they re-signed Mark Sanchez to a decent-sized contract to be their backup quarterback. And then they still have Matt Barkley, which they drafted second or third round. He might have even been re-signed to a small contract too, maybe. Not sure on that. A fourth no-name, and then now they brought in Tim freaking Tebow. I mean, if you're Mark Sanchez, geez, you just gotta be thinking, why me? Like, you know, is there some magnetic pull that I have with Tebow? Like, I just can't get away from this guy, you know? But so Chip Kelly thinks he's a genius enough to, you know, come in and make something out of Tim Tebow. Good luck, Chip Kelly. And good luck, Eagles fans, man. I do not envy you guys one bit. And in 2 to 3 years, when the Chip Kelly experiment has failed horribly and crashed and burned, I will be the first person to console and congratulate the Philadelphia Eagles on being able to move forward and experience better things. Because, man, I'm telling you, until he proves me otherwise, Chip Kelly is an egomaniac moron who has no clue what he's doing in the NFL. That's just my opinion. And again, he has every right to prove me wrong, and he may very well. And I would be happy with that. Again, I don't root for people to not succeed. I merely express whether I expect them to or not, and the reasons for that opinion. That's all. It's not personal. And then final NFL news before we get to our draft player preview. Greg Hardy, who signed a big contract, well, mostly with incentives, but signed a contract with the Dallas Cowboys to be their stud pass rushing defensive end in the offseason. Came over from the Carolina Panthers. He was the guy who was out with problems legally, you know, similar to Adrian Peterson was. Well, anyway, the NFL announced today that he is suspended for the first 10 games of the regular season without pay. And the Dallas Cowboys and Greg Hardy were only expecting 4 games, maybe 6 tops. Hardy will send it to an immediate appeal. It could get appealed. It's an old crime being punished under new rules, so there is very strong potential for it to be reversed in the appeal court, but then the NFL will appeal that, and it'll be this just back and forth appeal thing. Like, that's what the NFL does with all these issues until they get what they want. But what does it mean for Dallas? Do they just cut this guy now? Do they keep him and hope that he can kind of be their ace, you know, to put them over the top just in the playoff run, basically, at the end of the season? Does it change their draft priority? I felt they were going to go defensive line in the first round anyway, or at least I felt they should. And now I even more so feel like they should if they lost the one stud on the defense is out for a sure 10 games. But that remains to be seen. But that being said, it is time for part 3 of our 4-part balls deep NFL draft preview. In part 1, we went over draft strategy and understanding how the draft is approached and how it works from the front office side of things, as well as the coaching and player side of things as well. Last week, we discussed the different position and team needs that each team has and where they might be looking positions-wise to go in the draft. And this week, we will be getting to know the first-round talent players that you can expect to hear their names called sometime on next Thursday or early in the second round, or maybe slide to the third round. But these are the guys these are the 30 to 40 guys that should be going in the first round. Again, 32 will be picked because there's 32 teams, but I'll give you about 40 names